Good morning. Hi. My name is Erica Cotton, and I am a woman in long-term recovery.
Hi, Erica.
Hi. What that means for me is I have not found it necessary to take a drink or a drug since March 17th, 2017. And welcome to the Opioid Overdose Prevention and Reversal panel. We have our panelists, Will, Casey, Tara, and Seth.
Hey now.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and do a brief description of what this panel is regarding, and then we'll get started with our speakers. This panel will discuss how to deal with opioid overdoses. Most Oxford House residents don't relapse, but occasionally it will happen. Relapse is most likely to happen during early stages of residency in an Oxford House. This is why Oxford houses are strongly encouraged to have newcomers share a room with another resident for socialization purposes and as a check on behavior that may suggest a relapse has occurred or is imminent. Relapse always requires immediate expulsion. Opioid overdoses can be fatal, and residents should be aware of what action should be taken if a resident is believed to have overdosed. Once the immediate crisis is over, residents can move on to expulsion as required by the Oxford House Charter. This panel will discuss how to recognize overdoses and what actions Oxford House residents should take to respond to a possible overdose by a resident. Narcan and other antidotes can save the life of an opioid abuser who has overdosed. Oxford houses typically keep an overdose antidote on hand. All house members should know the signs of an overdose and what to do in the event of a relapse overdose. The panelists are all knowledgeable about overdoses and how to deal with them. They will provide valuable guidance to Oxford House residents who may have to deal with an overdose in their Oxford house. Okay. All right, and our first speaker is going to be Will Madison. Will Madison is currently a training and education coordinator in the state of North Carolina and has held that position since 2017. Previously, he was an outreach services representative for Oxford House, Inc. for Greensboro, High Point, and Winston-Salem area of North Carolina. He has been in long-term recovery since 2011 and has been working for Oxford House since 2012. Y'all welcome Will.
Thank you, Erica. Take this mask off. I honestly expected this room to be a lot fuller than it is. I was in a state agencies panel a minute ago, and there was no room to even stand in the back. So maybe some folks are still out there smoking. My name is Will Madison. I'm a person in long-term recovery. What that means for me is I have not had a drink or a drug since June 23rd of 2011. I am a training coordinator for Oxford House, Inc. in North Carolina, and that position is kind of unique. There's only 2, maybe 3 training coordinators within the whole Oxford House organization, and what we do is specific to training residents on primarily overdose prevention, medication-assisted treatment, and things of that sort. But today we're here to talk about overdose prevention. Each one of the panelists has, a unique thing that they will speak about. We're going to try not to overlap, but it's all centered around the same thing. So if we do, it's probably for a reason. So I'm going to talk about two elements of this overdose prevention and reversal. I'm going to talk about overdose reversal, and I'm going to talk about fatal overdoses within the Oxford House. So how many of you have had a overdose reversal in your house? So quite a few. How many of you have had a fatal overdose in your house? So about the same amount of hands. Unfortunately, it happens. Overdose happens, and sometimes they can be fatal. We've seen it in Oxford House more times than we'd like to, but there's hope that we can prevent those if we work together within the houses. The signs that some of the folks will talk about on this panel will help you be able to identify that. But I'm primarily going to talk about the overdose reversal. What do you do if there is an overdose in your house? It's a crisis. It's an event. There's high stress. It might be unfamiliar. You might not know what to do. So this is really for you just to understand what you should do if there's an overdose reversal in your house. And this is post-Narcan. The person has already responded to the Narcan, came back, and here's the event you're dealing with. So the first thing you want to do is, one, make sure the individual's okay. They're responsive, they're breathing, all that good stuff. Notify the outreach worker. Let the outreach worker know, hey, we just had an overdose reversal in our house, so that they can be informed of it. But most importantly is they can give you the guidance and support that you may need if you're dealing with that. One thing that's, I won't say got us in trouble, but it can, is social media, being on Facebook, Instagram, whatever, posting things like that about the event. It's not a good thing to do. It's kind of just, let's deal with it here in the house first, and then we'll work through it together. So it's not really beneficial to anybody to post something about it on Facebook. Obviously, an individual in Oxford House has relapsed, so there's an expulsion meeting that has to take place. And that expulsion meeting is just like any other expulsion. There's one part of it that we need to pay attention to, and that's simply the fact that if there's an overdose reversal, the person is responsive, they're coherent, they're part of that meeting, they're expelled from the house. It's your job as housemates to make sure the individual has somewhere safe to go. Some states even have laws that I think protect that. But if you don't, you need to make sure they have somewhere safe to go. It's encouraged to get them evaluated by medical personnel, but they do not have to go to the hospital. They don't have to go in the ambulance. That's their choice. And you want to step in as their housemate and say, hey, look, it's fine. Let's just go through the process here. We'll get you checked out to make sure you're all right. And I say that because Narcan can wear off, and that individual's expelled from the house. Maybe they drive down the street, park at the food line, and the Narcan wears off and they slip back into that overdose state. So they're alone now in their car in the food line parking lot. So that's why it's so important to make sure that they are evaluated by medical personnel and that you do your job to see that they are okay and they get where they need to go. Documentation, you cannot document too much. Document everything that happened, led up to it, why you suspected it, who was there, all that stuff. Document it in your house meeting minutes. Those meeting minutes are legal binding documents. So make sure that you're thorough in those meeting minutes, documenting what happened and everything of that sort. It can be more stressful for some than others. If you've never experienced it, a large population of us have experienced it, whether it's pre-recovery or not. But be there for one another, support each other, make sure that everyone in the house is okay, because it can be a traumatic experience, even in a reversal. It's high stress, and you just want to make sure that you all are doing what you're there for, living in Oxford House together to be each other's eyes and ears and be there for one another. So more so than any other time, step in, just, hey, have a meeting about it, y'all check in with one another, that kind of thing. Whatever you do to unify the group, you maybe step it up a notch when you have dealt with something like this. And then the next thing to do would, how do we prevent this? What can we do better? Is there anything in this event that could have prevented an overdose, or is there anything we could have done to respond better, quicker? Was it really sloppy? What do we need to do? Educate yourself as much as possible. And as I mentioned, there's only a few training coordinators, but most staff and a lot of chapter officers and state association officers have been through some sort of training in overdose prevention. There's a lot of stuff outside of Oxford House that offers overdose prevention, but try to get a training scheduled for your house. And I know I can speak for myself, and I think Casey as well. If you need something, if you got some questions, just because I'm not in your state or your outreach worker or whatever, My phone's on. You can call me. Hey, we're doing this. What do you think? Should we try that? Whatever. Feel free to reach out, schedule a training, try to get educated so that, if it does happen again, you're better equipped to deal with it. So the next element is going to be a fatal overdose. It happens, and it's happened more than, probably we could count in Oxford House. And it's kind of scary because it's preventable. And, I know there's times where maybe there's nothing we may have been able to do in that incident, but there's also times where there is, the importance of having a roommate, the importance of checking on each other daily. That's the kind of stuff that, when I hear there's been an overdose death in the Oxford House and the house didn't know about it for a day and a half or 2 days. I can't understand that. I truly cannot understand how that can happen. You live with someone, they're not showing up, you don't know where they are. You open the door. What's up? You good? Everything good? It's all you got to do. Check on each other daily. And that's something that can prevent that from happening, So we can do that. I think a lot of houses now have made that a point to do, each night or each day that, if you don't see somebody, open their door. Hey, what's up? Everything good with you? And that's okay. So again, if there's a fatal overdose, it's even more stressful. There's a lot going on in that moment with first responders that have been there. You need to understand what you may be getting into, what it may look like. If someone finds someone who is unresponsive, they're not responding to that Narcan, notify the outreach worker as soon as possible, or a state officer if you don't have outreach, so that, like I said before, they can offer you the most support and whatever support you may need and guide you through that process. This is something that I have seen, and it's never good, is the house thinking that they needed to notify the family. Let's let the professionals do that. That's in their job. They need to be the one handling that. Because we don't want to get into all that. There's, someone has lost a loved one, and, a lot of things can happen at that point. So let the police or the investigators notify the next of kin. And like I said before, you need to understand what you might see. Understanding and how to handle the actual event in the scene. There could be bloods, there could be paraphernalia, there could be drugs. You don't want to handle that by yourself, and it can be messy. It can. So use each other in that time. Before first responders arrive, use each other to work through that, to try to do what you got to do. But then let the professionals come in, the first responders, they'll do their thing and they leave. But you need to know that there's still a mess in that room. There may still be paraphernalia. They don't typically take that. If it's out in plain sight, they will. But there could be some stuff in there. So again, work together to handle that. If you're not comfortable, call an outreach worker. See if you can get some support from your local chapter. Hey, we need to clean this room out. That kind of thing. Something else that I learned from firsthand experience with an overdose death was they have to move the body out of the house. And it's not something you really forget when someone is carried out of a house in a black body bag. So I always encourage the house to, step to another room, or let's walk outside while they handle this part. And I learned that, and it's maybe for another reason, but my brother-in-law overdosed in his mom and dad's house in 2018, and they were getting ready to move his body, and the mom and dad are standing there, and I knew, hey, let's walk over here, let's go into the bedroom. So, I don't think you want to see that. It's something you probably can't forget, especially if it's, a loved one, a son, whatever. Again, very important to stay off social media. No one wants to find out that a loved one has passed. Don't post RIP so-and-so, because their distant relative in another state might look on Facebook and see, oh, that's how, their nephew or whoever passed away. House and chapter support, use your house and use your chapter. More than likely, if there's an overdose death in a house, an outreach worker will come, at some point. I know some areas are a little bit closer for them to come, but a chapter officer, a state officer may come check in, see how you guys are doing, that kind of thing. And then know that there's professional support out there that you may not be able to get from Oxford House and from a 12-step group. And I'm talking specifically about grief counseling. There's a lot of crisis intervention teams out there or organizations that will actually come to the house and see if anybody needs anything. And you might not know what you need. It might take a couple days. So that leads me into the effects of an overdose death in your house. It could be, like being numb to it. It doesn't really bother you, but then 2-3 weeks later, it really hits you. Or you could be numb to it until you start cleaning the bedroom out, or until you start reading the next week's meeting minutes and that individual's name's on it. So those are little things that you just need to prepare yourself for and know that those are real and those feelings may come up. And you can talk to your house about it. Everybody's dealing with that together. So just make sure that you know that there is support out there that you might not get from your house, and you just need to ask. Ask your state officers, ask your outreach worker, hey, is there anything out here? Because, we've got one guy, or we've got even myself, hey, we need something. We need to talk to somebody. And they'll give you the resources you need for that. This one, even more important, is documentation. Just like we talked about before, it's very important to have the documentation correctly on the right paperwork, not on a notebook piece of paper, not on a blank printer piece of paper. It needs to be on an Oxford House meeting minutes form. And the only reason that's a legal binding document. So when death is involved, a lot can happen. And we just need to document what we did, what went on, so that if something comes up legally, we have it documented. So that's really all that I have about the two. I know that's a lot of information, and it's hard to really understand it if you haven't been through it. But chances are there's a house or in your chapter or across wherever it has been through it. And if you have questions, they could probably answer those or bring it up in your next chapter meeting or take it back to your house and talk about it and say, hey, what are we going to do? How can we prepare ourselves for something that may happen like this? How can we prepare ourselves for an overdose? Or what do we need to do? What is the rule? What do we need to figure out here? And get some ground rules and kind of work together so everybody's aware of that. But that's really all I have. I'm going to pass it on back to Erica. But if you have any questions... If you have any questions, I know we've got some time at the end, but I will obviously hang out after. Sometimes those questions you might want to ask on a more personal level. I'll be glad to sit around and hang out and talk to you. So thank you.
Thank you, Will. Our next panelist is going to be Casey Longin. Casey works for Oxford House, Inc. as the Training and Education Coordinator for the state of Texas. Her sobriety date is September 14th, 2011. She is an alumni of Oxford House in Oregon. She is a recent college graduate with her degree in criminal justice. She has a passion for helping others and is a voice for those who have not yet found their way home. She believes in others and will loudly state that everybody deserves a chance at recovery, no matter what their path looks like. Y'all welcome Casey.
All right, hi guys. So I'm gonna go through some pretty important information. How many of you have either overdosed yourself or witnessed an overdose in person, not on TV? Okay, Okay, so a lot of this information may not be brand new to you guys, but still, it's very important to talk about it, continue talking about it, because what Will, following behind what Will said, we lose a lot of people, and some of these cases can be absolutely preventable. So I do want to start off by saying, in May of 2020, we lost the highest number of people that we have so far since overdose deaths have happened, and that number is 93,331. Those are only the ones that are documented. So we need to think about that because there are lots of people that die alone on the streets. They're covered under trash bags. I mean, there's a lot of scenarios, and those people don't need to be left out of this equation either. So I want everybody to remember that and to think about that. So this is a real picture, as you guys can see. I'm gonna go through what the signs of overdoses look like. So this photo really captures the reality of what we're dealing with, not just inside the house, right? But you could go to the grocery store, gas station, and you could come across a scene that looks like this. What you don't see in this photo is that there was a 3-year-old in the back seat, okay? This is not a game, right? We don't make these things up. These pictures, unfortunately, but yet fortunately, are posted online, and we can use these as a teaching tool and a reminder, okay? So some of the signs, the number one sign that is gonna mimic that photo is gonna be unresponsiveness. So a person can look like that. They're not coherent, they're not awake, but on the flip side of that, you can also have somebody who might be trying to talk, right? They'll nod out a little bit and kind of wake up for a second. They can go back out, and sometimes it can mimic somebody who's very drunk, and that is also a sign of overdose. It's not always gonna look like this photo. You're gonna have pale skin. It can kind of look like a grayish, whitish color, kind of an ashy color to it. And that is because things are slowing down, right? The body starts to shut down, kind of from the top down. Your brain will tell your lungs to stop breathing, your heart to quit beating, your blood is gonna slowly stop pumping through your body. Things are shutting down. Fingernails, in the moment, let's say you come across a scene, you're not gonna think, oh, hey, I need to check that person's fingernails, right? But it is one of the signs. So right here at the cuticle line, their fingernails can kind of look a purplish blue tint as well as their lips. Obviously, pinpoint pupils, that's gonna be a number one sign to remember. If you don't remember all these other ones, remember the unresponsiveness and the pinpoint pupils. You always want to open up somebody's eyes and look at their eyes, okay? A slow pulse, if they are lucky enough to still be alive, it can be very difficult to find a pulse in somebody. So let's say we have the gas station scenario, right? And you come across the situation. If you're bent over and let's say your own pulse is racing and you try to grab somebody's wrist like this, if you check a pulse with your thumb, it's not accurate because you can feel your own pulse in your thumb. So couple that with, your own, not everybody is scared, but the nerves and everything going through, that can throw off trying to get an accurate read on somebody. So if you're gonna check for a pulse, you wanna check right here on the side of the neck. Labored breathing, so some people call it the death gurgle or the death rattle. It sounds like a very deep and guttural snore. How many people have not heard what that sounds like? Okay, so it is one of the last things to happen. People, like I said earlier, the body is shutting down. It is a very distinct and very scary sound to hear, and once you hear it, you will never be able to unhear it. There are videos, on YouTube. Unfortunately, people do take videos of people going through an overdose. Again, we can use that as a teaching tool, but I'm gonna say this, that some people are more concerned with taking a video of somebody taking their last breath than they are of actually trying to render aid. This is why we're here, and this is why we do these trainings, because we're most often the first ones on scene before any other type of help arrives. People have a number of excuses. They want to say, oh, I don't want to get involved because if the police show up, they're going to tie me into it somehow. I don't care what's going on. If you see something, you need to try to do your best and look out and help that person that is dying. You need to put yourself in that situation. A lot of us are very lucky to have Oxford House, but there are so many that don't have that option, right? They haven't made it home yet, and they may never make it home. So that's why we have to be the ones to look out for them and render aid. All right. So this is the acronym, SAVE ME. These are going to be some of the steps to go through if you, if somebody's overdosing in your house specifically, but also day-to-day life. I'm going to run through it. I know we're on a time frame, so I'm going to go through it a little faster than normal. So let's say you come home, you find somebody slumped over on the couch, you think that it's an overdose situation. The first thing that you're going to want to do is you need to get that person laying down flat on the ground. You cannot effectively render aid to someone if they are slumped over, if they're laying on a couch, curled up in a ball. You need to get them laying down flat. And I'm not going to scream at you guys, so I'm not going to do that. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to yell, you're going to want to scream that person's name. Hopefully there's more than one of you home, and you should be yelling loud enough to bring somebody else's attention to it. People think that they need to be timid when this is happening, or they're afraid of what it's going to look like. It doesn't matter. This is not pretty. This person is dying. So yell, scream. You want to shake their name or shake their body. You want to do this sternum rub. And so what that is using your knuckles like that. You're going to apply as much pressure as you can right here in the middle of their chest because it is a pain stimulator. If you don't weigh very much when you're doing that, get over the top of that person, kind of support your wrist, and you want to put as much pressure down. If you crack somebody's chest plate or break a rib or whatever it is, you're doing it right. Don't be afraid to hurt them because they're dying. Just keep that in mind. Call 911 or yell for somebody else to call 911. You want help on the way. Next thing, check that person's airway because unless you were sitting right there with them, you don't know what they were doing. They could have made food. Let's say they chose to, whatever method they chose to do the drugs, they could have been choking on their own vomit by now. They could be choking on that food. Let's say they used a syringe and vial, pulled off the cap to that syringe. That could be lodged in their throat. Their airway needs to be clear so you can start doing rescue breathing. So you would tilt their head to the side, right? And if you can see something that is within reach, kind of use your finger and get it out of there. I know, gross, COVID, germs, you just have to do it. You just have to do it. And then make sure that their head is back in that position because you're going to start doing rescue breathing. So that is the ventilate part. So you want to tilt that person's head back, pinch their nose, and give them one breath for every 5 seconds. And you need to be giving them a very good, strong breath of air. Every time you give them a breath of air, you should be able to see out of the corner of your eye that their chest is rising and falling. If you don't see that, you're not doing it good enough. And do that a few times. And we're going through this slow, but if you haven't been through this, it needs to happen real quick. Like 30, 35 seconds, you need to be going through all these things. And then you evaluate really quick. Are they getting any better? Are they waking up? Are they coming out of it at all? And if not, then you need to start giving them Narcan. So it does not matter what nostril the Narcan goes into. The nasal Narcans, those are one dose. It's 2 doses in one box. And so you just pick a nostril, give them the Narcan, and you have to go right back into rescue breathing. We have had people that were given Narcan and people just kind of stood back and waited for the professionals to arrive. And technically that person made it, but they made it to the hospital. They were brain dead. They were in a coma. They never got off of life support. So that is why these 2 things are key, the Narcan and the rescue breathing. You are the ventilator for that individual until help arrives. You're probably going to get tired. You're going to run out of air. You're going to get dizzy. If there's more than one of you home, switch positions. Everybody needs to participate in this. You can do it alone, but if there is more people than yourself home, make sure that everybody's participating because you're going to get worn out. So let's say they come out of this. When they wake up, you don't know what you're going to get. Some people wake up very confused and they're really lethargic. Some people wake up and they get sick instantly. Some people wake up pissed. Don't expect somebody to come out of this and say, hey, thanks for saving my life. Thank you. Because they're scared, right? They don't know what's going on. It can take people a little bit to fully come out of this. Try to keep them laying down in that position that is called the recovery position because people will get sick. The Narcan, once that starts kicking in, some people do vomit. You want that to go out and not up and back down in their throat so that they would choke again possibly, and let them know that help is on the way. Try to keep them there. Like what Will said, they don't have to receive help. They don't have to get in that ambulance, but try to do your best to encourage that. if you have a vehicle, because some people may not have insurance, right? Or they don't have the money. They don't want to take that ambulance ride. If you have a vehicle and are solid in how you're feeling within your own recovery, take them to the hospital, walk them inside. Don't drop them off. That has happened before. People won't go in. But you need to think, this is going to come back to yourself, and you need to think where you're at. What if this was you? What if you relapsed and this was you? Wouldn't you want somebody else to take that extra 5 minutes and give you a ride? That's why we're here. So keep that in mind. All right, how Narcan works. How am I on time?
You're at 11 minutes.
Okay. All right. Okay. So as soon as you introduce Narcan into somebody's body, right, it comes in, here's the receptors. It will pop those opioids off of the receptor long enough for that body to reboot. So your brain is going to tell your lungs, hey, we need to start breathing. Your heart's going to start beating. Your blood's going to start flowing a little bit. But it doesn't last very long. So I made this PowerPoint 3 years ago, and at that time, the Narcan shelf life was at 30-minute window before it would start wearing off. Now we're looking at 10 minutes. So those are some of the new cases that are happening. And that goes back to the potency, the fentanyl, and you can use Narcan in a fentanyl situation, and it's not 100%, but in the moment of an overdose, give somebody Narcan. It is not going to harm them. You cannot get high off of Narcan, so that doesn't work either. It is non-addictive. It does take between 2 and 5 minutes to start working. Sometimes that can happen sooner, sometimes it takes longer. Be prepared for multiple doses of Narcan. I don't know the last time I heard somebody was brought back with 1 dose of Narcan. It just doesn't, those aren't the times that we're in anymore. Oh, that's too far. Okay, let me close with this. If you live in a multi-level house, keep Narcan upstairs, downstairs, bathrooms. The more amount of people that are in a house, you should probably, if you have the access to it, have a box per person that lives in your house. Don't lock it up. It still works past its expiration date. If you guys need information and resources on how to get Narcan, come find me, come talk to me, Will, any of us, and share this information with your people. Thank you.
Thank you, Casey. Okay, our next panelist is going to be Tara Meyer. Tara Meyer is the Senior Outreach Coordinator in New Jersey. Tara is a nationally certified peer recovery support specialist for addiction and also a certified recovery support practitioner in mental health through the state of New Jersey. Driven by her own personal experiences in Oxford House, Tara is passionate about providing residents with the most up-to-date best practices, education, and tools for building empowered Oxford houses. Outside of work, she herself values continued education and is in pursuit of an MBA with a concentration on nonprofit studies. Y'all welcome Tara.
Hello. Hi. My name is Tara Meyer, and I'm a woman in long-term recovery, which means for me that I have found freedom from active addiction since July 13th, 2013. That's cool, right? Erica, if you read my bio, in 2013, I would say, serves unlimited soup and salad at Olive Garden. Which is okay too, because that food's good. Let me just get back to, I know how to use computers.
You good? That was my responsibility. My apologies.
I think I got it.
Yes.
Okay.
Hold on, maybe if I click it again, it'll work. How about everybody go on TikTok for 1 second? Alex. Are you Alex? Yeah, right. Can I just go on to my Canva?
Yeah, or I can re-forward it because I can send your email to the email that's logged in.
I'm gonna tell you a story, okay? forever, I've been using PowerPoint. I've been very loyal to the PowerPoint, okay? And this year I was like, you know what? I'm going to try this Canva thing. Well, this is how it's going. So. Well, anywho's, I'm going to get started while they're doing stuff. I could probably. Okay. So I didn't choose opioid overdose as my forte. It just kind of stumbled. The paths crossed that way. I am a former opioid user myself, and while I was using opioids, I had never seen anyone overdose or even ever heard of anybody overdosing before. When I was living in my Oxford house, the outreach worker at the time had invited me to a firehouse where they were providing free naloxone kits for the attendees. I honestly didn't think I would need it. I had already been living in the house for a little over a year, and it really wasn't something that was on our radar. It wasn't happening in my area, but I really like hanging out with people and socializing, so I was like, sure, I'll go, no problem. They had cookies. So even in the training, I'm gonna be 100% honest with you all. I was not fully engaged with the trainer. I was there, I got my kit, I went home, I had absorbed some information. It was a little dry. There was an opportunity for us to get up and work on the dummy. I chose not to do that. I was like, I don't want to touch that thing. Everyone's been touching it, So I just brought my kit and had gone home. I returned from, thank you so much. So here we are. Is this full screen? No. I think I'm just gonna leave it. So I had returned from serving soup and salad of Olive Garden one night and returned to my Oxford house. And when I came in, everything was pretty quiet. It was about 10:30 at night. I went downstairs to my room without a thought about how everyone else in the house was doing or anything like that. A little while after I got out of the shower, I heard pretty loud screaming upstairs. And something in my brain was like, I gotta go get this kit. It was so strange. I just needed to go get it. So I got my kit, I ran upstairs, talk about chaos, everything that I had found out at that training that day. I don't know where it went. I didn't know what to do. I was screaming now too. I remembered enough that they said, the first thing you need to do is call 911. So I yelled back at another house member, call 911. We were able to revive her. Her name is Andy. When you talk about denial to the death, Casey, thank you. She woke up and we tried to explain to her what happened and she said, I didn't use. Yes, you did. Yes, you did, okay? So, we are, when we believe in something, we just keep going with it, That's a little feel-good story. Andy is still doing well today. Every time I see her, I get that that passion refresh. I'm like, yes, this is why we do this, She's reunited with her daughter. She's still alive today. It's great. But unfortunately, there's a lot of stories that didn't end so well. So my next story time for you is about my friend Miranda. So this is Miranda on the screen here. And I'm not trying to upset anybody. I just want you to feel humanized about this issue and let it be something that you take home and realize how important it is. So Miranda was a resident of the first women's house that I opened in New Jersey. I was a brand new outreach worker. I had known that Narcan was important, and myself and the chapter chairs and people on the state association had started setting up trainings at chapter meetings to get kits in houses. Miranda had lived in the house for a very short period of time. She had 45 days in recovery. The house was brand new. Actually, the whole house had less than 90 days of recovery. Yes, that was, we're going to go on from that point too. We learned a lot from this situation. But Miranda was one of the only 2 women in the house that knew how to use that Narcan kit, which is really important because the morning that she had passed away, the only other girl that knew how to use the Narcan kit was in hysteria. 911 was not called right away. And even though they did call 911, it took 10 minutes for the paramedics to arrive. So there were 6 other women in the house that had a Narcan kit that they did not know how to use. They did not know how to give rescue breaths. They did not know that Miranda had to be laying flat on the ground. They did everything that they tell you not to do. They got buckets of ice water and poured them on her. They were moving her head around, smacking her in the face. They called me. I was 45 minutes away. I got there in lightning speed. I jumped off of a treadmill and I was like, here we are. Those 10 minutes could have went differently for her. In 2015, the kits that we got were glass vials. I'm sure that we all know. Have we all seen the glass vials with the twisty? Yeah. They're like in 25 pieces. You got to put them together. Then they fall apart, exactly. One of the glass vials rolled off the table and shattered on the ground. So the girls were able to administer 1 dose of Narcan. Miranda still had a pulse when EMTs arrived, but it was too late. Miranda died at the house that day. Everybody's special to me. She was particularly special. Her parents had reached out to me personally after she had entered back into recovery because I had lived with her at my very first Oxford house and they remembered me. And I invited her to come live in this house and I granted her her own single room and all of that stuff I have to live with for the rest of my life. So what did we learn from this situation? The first thing, and we talked about it, was doubling up in rooms. So when you're working with a brand new house, if there's only 2 people, put them in the same room. As the house grows and fills, they get a little bit of bearings underneath, so you can start moving them to other rooms. Everyone should be trained and familiar with the use of naloxone. The training coordinators, amazing. Not every state has that. Not every state has open to public trainings. As long as you have a kit, you can go on YouTube and type in the kit that you have in possession and watch a 3-minute video on how to use that. Well, we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but it's something that we should be talking about frequently every time a new person moves in. Members should take behavior seriously. This goes with not speaking up as a matter of life or death, okay? I'm going to do both at the same time to save some time for you guys. The other woman in that Oxford house, Miranda, knew that Miranda had used, and she said nothing. I have a lot of guilt and remorse for that situation and things that I could have done different. I can't begin to imagine what that woman feels. I don't want any of you to feel that way. We don't have to. So when we're talking about relapse and that question that a lot of you ask on interviews, what are you going to do when you find out your roommate's using? We must drive home with everybody that this is a matter of life and death. And if you need to use Miranda's story in your areas, please do. Someone's calling me. Houses should possess more than 1 kit. So Will mentioned it, Casey mentioned it. That 1 kit fell on the ground, it broke, okay? If we had another kit, that could have helped her. She might have been alive today. The kits also grow legs. People steal them. They do. So let's get ahead of that. Let's provide a kit for every person that relapses when they leave. Because we care about their life no matter where they are, okay? So let's get as many kits as we can, any of them that become available to us. So this is what I call the priority project. I just made it up, okay? And this is from the time that they walk into our houses till the day that they leave. And the message is that their life is our priority. Their safety is our priority. So how do we do that in our houses, outside of Narcan kits? How do we keep Narcan as a message and the trainings a priority in all of the houses? In New Jersey, we have something called Nick's Law. So Nick's Law was signed in New Jersey in 2016 following an overdose death of Nick Rhodes. The law is intended to protect recently expelled members from recovery and sober houses. Nick Rhodes did not live in an Oxford house. That really doesn't matter. He was a person in recovery, and then he had relapsed. He asked his mom and dad if he could come home for the weekend because he missed them. That story was not true. In fact, Nick had relapsed and been asked to leave his his recovery house. His parents did not know, so he went home that night and died in their living room. Nick's family lobbied and was able to have this law signed in 2016 to make it mandatory that if you are expelled from a recovery home, that emergency contact is contacted at the time that they leave the house. So this is not something that you have to wait for legislation to pass in your area. When you're leaving, or when you're asking an expelled member to leave, when you give them a kit, you can take their application, which I'm sure you have securely stored in your secretary book, and you're gonna call their emergency contact. What you say to them is up to you. In New Jersey, we tell them that the person is believed to have relapsed and they will be no longer living in the house. This is a conversation that you can have at the beginning of their membership so they understand that the person that they put on that application is going to be the person that hears first that they've returned to active use. Good? Okay. Follow the expelled member's recovery and relapse plan. Our behaviors are the first indicator of a relapse. When Johnny stops going to meetings, when Susie stops picking up her kids at the kids on the weekend, this is all stuff that we have to be aware of. A relapse could be imminent. If you're willing, connect them with resources for recovery. Send relapse members out with a kit, so we mentioned that. It's pretty common practice in New Jersey when somebody relapses, we try to get them on the phone with either a recovery specialist or to a healthcare center where they can get services like detox. This is more of what I feel like a moral obligation, just as somebody in recovery helping another person in recovery. We want them to stay alive. So, this is from a house that doesn't exist anymore, but that's okay. What we do here, this is like a set of expectations that would be received upon acceptance into the house. So whether you call it a probationary period, new contract time, new resident, blackout, you would not be able to get off of blackout until you can demonstrate how to use a Narcan kit properly. Yes. So, thank you. Thank you. So again, this is where we utilize that 3-minute YouTube video depending on a kit. And you can make it kind of fun. You can make it a skit. Show me, I'm overdosed. Show me show me how you're gonna revive me. And if you feel comfortable with that person's demonstration, you can get off blackout. It's fairly simple.
1 minute left.
Oh, shoot. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of breeze through the rest of this chapter level. So not only does New Jersey do trainings at the chapter level, but we have this extra level of accountability. On our housing summary reports, we ask if their Narcan kit, is everyone trained on how to use naloxone, and where is your kit? Why is this question on here? Because when they're doing their audit, they're like, oh, Johnny, where the heck's our kit? They can write in the dining room. That's where everybody knows where it is. This is also a good time to check expiration date, like Casey mentioned. They are able to be used after they expire. Some of the kits, you can see the liquid. If the liquid is clear, it's still good to use. It starts to get cloudy when it gets expired. A lot of the places that give you kits will tell you that if you need it replaced, they'll replace it for you. House meetings. So this is actually a Texas housing meeting minutes sheet, yes. So this is, again, just an extra level of accountability at the house level. As soon as somebody enters into the house, we should have that Narcan kit or naloxone kit out at house meeting and just show them a little bit about what it is. Maybe tell them, hey, if something happens, we call 911 first. Just these little bits of information will help if something like an emergency or an overdose happens before they're able to get properly trained. So this is just a website that is full of resources on how to get free Narcan kits, how to find trainings local to your area. I will say that I just found out from Seth about Kansas that every state has different laws. In New Jersey, you cannot be held liable for another person overdosing. I would definitely check and make sure that your laws protect your house and everybody that's involved in the overdose before you go and get a kit. Definitely check with your outreach worker, and hopefully we can help you do that. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me anytime. Again, I'm Tara Meyer from New Jersey.
Thank you, Tara. And I apologize I wasn't more prepared. So I'm going to do Seth's first, and then I'll come in and introduce him. Maybe. Yep. Yeah, I would have never found it.
That's right. It's on there.
And Seth, perfect, thank you. Okay. All right, and our final panelist is going to be Seth Dewey. Seth began his journey in recovery in Oxford House in Chapter 13 out of Hutchinson, Kansas in 2017. He served in various house positions before serving as a chapter chair, state chairman, and now where he serves as the Oxford House World Council. This absolutely vital experience opened the door for his current employment as the substance misuse health educator for the Reno County Health Department, where Seth manages state and federal grants. This includes the planning and implementation of innovative strategies to reduce substance misuse and in particular overdose deaths in the local areas. Y'all welcome Seth.
Hi. Man, these panelists, though, how amazing, right? All right, so like she said, I'm a person in recovery, and the thing is, man, is I'm gonna focus on things from a little bit of a different perspective, okay? So y'all have outreach workers. In Kansas, we don't, okay? And because of that, we have to do things a little different. How I like to view that as is an opportunity to improvise, adapt, and overcome. So what we're going to do is talk a little bit about the temperature of the situation that happened when I first got into an Oxford House. So it was right in 2017, which was when the term the opioid epidemic was coined. And that was when there were about 72,000 overdose deaths that happened in 2017. So flash forward to 2018. See, at that point, I was new in recovery. I was in an Oxford House. I didn't have to think about that anymore, right? Doesn't affect me anymore, right? No, wrong. So in 2018, I started learning some other things, right? I started getting connected to that network of Oxford houses. I saw people doing opioid overdose trainings, like Casey, right? And I was like, dang, that's cool. That's still our people. I might have some kind of a feeling of responsibility or something. And there were others. Lacey, there, right there, she's out there. She was one of those too. So in 2018, Kansas had 345 overdose deaths, and 12 of those that were reported as overdoses happened in Reno County, which is where Chapter 13 is located. Several of those were people in recovery. They were people from our houses, man. So that's when in 2018, some of our alumni started going around and talking to us about this because they knew Casey, and we were asking questions like, well, what can we do? They're like, man, it's really hard in Kansas. We don't have outreach to help us out with that stuff. And we're like, what can we do? Well, the first step is we could raise awareness, right? Who better to raise awareness than us? That's our business, right? So who better to lead the charge in that? So we had some amazing alumni that got us together and started having these conversations. We had current house members that were curious about it. We were on fire, man, right? We had the Reno County Drug Court. What? They were an ally? They were. They were an ally for us, right? We had a prevention network that was interested in this, and they could tell that we were passionate, right? And then we had a local coalition called the Reno County Drug Impact Task Force, the DIT. And the first time they asked me to sit on that panel, I said, I was like, what, task force? No way, right? But it was good because they helped us to do things like this. They gave us funding. See that right there? That's an Oxford House. That's an Oxford House with that end to overdose hashtag right there, right? And then we had these little cool little overdose prevention pamphlets that were there. At that time, we didn't have Narcan yet, though. We were slow in Kansas. We still are. We're behind the times. We're right there in the middle of nowhere. Our laws are behind the times. But who better to change the laws and the policies than us? So what we did is we made sure that all houses started to be equipped with Narcan. It was a weird process, man. Narcan is expensive. And the fact that it is that expensive is sad. And the fact that in Kansas we couldn't get any grant funding for it was even sadder. So you know what we did? We got a hold of Texas. And, well, hey, that held its own set of problems. We'll talk about that later. So, and then we started to do cool things, right? Once we started getting Narcan in every house, we started doing these suggestions that they're talking about. We started making sure that everyone, if they were going to get off of their orientation phase, they were going to be trained in the use of naloxone. And that every chapter meeting, every single chapter meeting, every one of the new members is trained in Narcan there as well. Where we go over the signs, we go over what to say in the event of an overdose, we go over how you handle it, and we go over the fact that you're gonna be scared. So train often, train hard, get in the habit so when it happens, it comes as second nature. So then something worse happened, right? We had two really good people, man. Overdose, and they didn't make it. They were in the houses, and we were angry. We were angry that things written on paper were holding us up. I didn't see the correlation how this applied to the Oxford House model and the concept until I was reading it one day, and out of necessity, the founders of Oxford House decided to create something, right? They created something they needed. And so we started having these conversations, right? We had a call to action for the community. We said everyone needs Narcan. Everyone needs trained on Narcan. We had marches and stuff like you see here. It was really cool. We had stories where the families could come and talk about it in a safe space. See, that stigma is just as deadly. That stigma is just as deadly. When families aren't able to tell their stories in a safe space, man, it kills people. We started getting that widespread community involvement and support from multi-sector partnerships, including law enforcement, EMS, local politicians, state politicians, and we started bringing them to the table. Then there was this little thing that happened, a group called AAO, Addicts Against Overdose. It started. Since then, we've changed the name. It's now going to be known as the Kansas Recovery Network, because when we start to know better, we do better. And we're not going to use those stigmatizing languages, because while you and I have earned the right to call each other an addict, no one else has. That's why it's so important that we continually keep up to date with our destigmatizing language and address each other respectfully and ask people in recovery what they want to be called. Person first language saves lives. So the next level, we were the only ones providing Narcan or its education in our houses and in our community. We knew that we had to organize because we wanted to accomplish more. Why stop? When you got something good going, why stop? We started doing public trainings, shirts to raise funds for more naloxone, and we had consistent content on social media. So, then something else really cool happened because of this little marriage that was going on and this movement and this fire that was going on in our community, right? Okay, let me tell you this. We had the sheriff of Reno County, who was super familiar with me because they were looking for me for quite some time. They were looking, in fact, every single one of us that started this group, Addicts Against Overdose, the way we know the sheriff is because we were out at his facility quite often. All right? So we started attending these drug impact task force meetings and making representation from Oxford House and Addicts Against Overdose known. We started giving our opinions because they were asking for it on policies and what could be done different in our community. It was cool. Like one of the coolest things I've ever seen. And it's still happening. It's not stopping. So we started having these new partnerships and they started expanding. In late 2019, they actually made a position available for someone in the community that would come on and manage substance misuse grants. And they actually ended up hiring me. And it's through the county, and I was like, listen, I got a background. I'm not gonna be able to probably get this job. And sure enough, I did. Another thing that Oxford House, another thing that Oxford House does for us though, man, we step outside of that comfort zone. We learn how to talk to people from other areas of life. We learn how to do conflict resolution and hold business meetings. That's a college education. You know what I'm saying? I said it in another breakout panel earlier that the experience we have in an Oxford House gives us more experience. More of you are better qualified to sit on a board of directors than half of the population of America because of the experience you have in an Oxford House. So one of the first things we did when I got this job at the health department is we changed the name of that drug impact task force. We named it the Reno Recovery Collaborative because that term was stigmatizing and scary, right? So when we did that, though, we gave AAO a different spot at the table. They started coming on in more of a seriously respected role, right? People are like, whoa, these guys know what they're talking about. The other thing that really upsets us is we talked about this a lot already, is there's some of us, we notice we have to say that that is the overdose deaths that are reported, right? So in Kansas, my goodness, they miss out on a lot, man. There's a lot of our people that their deaths aren't getting classified as overdose when all of us know that's what it was. Their family knows what it was. And guess what? That's not right. We're not getting an accurate depiction of the problem. We're not getting an accurate depiction of what we can do better. So what we started doing is we started tracking overdoses in real time, and that increased our availability to coordinate with Addicts Against Overdose for more rapid response to overdoses and high-intensity overdose areas. We started using this program called OD Map, which allows us to track those with our local partners, not law enforcement, but our EMS and our county coroner. So we included AAO on public messaging for our press releases and related to emergent drug trends and spikes in overdoses. That had never been done. It still isn't done in Kansas. We're the only place. Reno County is the only place that does that. Because of the hard work of those Oxford House alumni, those Oxford House members, and the people in recovery, and those allies of ours, they're realizing that this is something that everybody needs to know about. Why? Because the issue's been humanized. We got out there and we talked about it enough, and we will never stop. We will never stop. We will not be the token drug addict that is at your job. We won't settle for that. We'll come and take your job. You know what I mean? And we'll do it better, right? Because we can, right? That's where that stigma dies. That stigma dies when we get out there, we talk about our experiences. That is part of overdose prevention as well, man, is ending stigma. So we started trying to make sure. Okay, cool. So AAO began training local businesses and other community partner agencies. And since then, Reno County Sheriff's Department and Hutchinson Police Department all now have Narcan policies we've helped develop for them, and they all carry Narcan. Before, they said that it wasn't necessary for them to carry Narcan. And that made us mad. But there wasn't much we could do about it but continually hand out more Narcan to our community members. And then the sheriff and the chief of police come up to me and they're like, well, can you help us get Narcan? Because it looks pretty bad that all you guys have Narcan and we don't. So if we have to, we shame them into doing the right thing. So here's some of the pictures, man, of some of the stuff. Ooh, here's some of the naloxone kits that we have. We all bag them in one of our other members' apartment. Lacey, some of the others right there from Chapter 13. We get together, we bag these things. We have wound care kits. There's hygiene kits, feminine hygiene products and everything like that for homeless, because as we all know, it's not just the naloxone, right? It's all these issues compound one another, man. We got to address them all. We got to give as much help as we can. Here's the pictures of our distributions. All people in recovery getting together, man. That's my son. Yeah, that's my dude, right? And then there's Lacey, right? These are ones that have lived it, just like you. That's all been our experience, man. So you guys have amazing opportunities, the most of you, for trainings, and we are envious of it. But since that wasn't available to us, we created our own. So let this be known right here. Let this be an example of our power, right? All of us can do something. We can educate. With that education comes empowerment. And after we get empowered and educated, we can engage. There is no reason that we in recovery shouldn't be at the forefront of advocacy and policy change.
Yes.
Yep.
I would like to invite Casey back up to the podium, and she's going to give us some information on a Narcan app.
All right, super quick. So there's an app that's free to download. Everybody can download it on all devices. It's called Narcan Now. So when you click on that app, it's going to look like this on the front. It's got some information down here. All you have to do is hit tap to continue. It will show you locations to pharmacies that not only carry it, but that actually have Narcan on hand at that specific pharmacy. All you have to do is put in your zip code or an address to the closest location. There is the video. All you have to do is hit play. There's no reason for anybody to not know how to use Narcan. Nice. Download this app. Tell people about this app. It's free, it's educational, and it saves lives. Thank you.
It's Narcan Now. Okay, so we have about 5 minutes left, and we want to open it up to a few questions. We got a lot of great information. Let's give our panelists another round of applause. Thank you all. Remember, take this information back to your areas, right? Let's replicate. That's what we're here for this weekend. So if you have any questions, please make sure that you line up behind the microphone. Make sure you speak into the microphone so we can all hear you. And also, please be mindful of social distancing as well. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Cindy. I'm Cindy from Washington State, and I just want to reiterate what you said. I don't remember your name, but what you were saying about not speaking up. We had a woman in our house. She was 5 days out of prison. We did so many things wrong, and unfortunately, we didn't. It took her life, and we put her in her own room. We didn't think that she would be using drugs. She had a device on her ankle. We thought she'd be fine, and we had her at a house meeting, and we told her we were giving her a UA, and we let her go downstairs. You're not supposed to let the person out of your sight. So we let her go downstairs, and then we found her 20 minutes later when we went down to check on her face. And when we called the ambulance, this is my question, they told us not to give her any breaths. They told us just to pump. Is that wrong? Should we have given her breaths as well?
Oh, okay. Can you guys hear me? Okay. So, you kind of just have to gauge that situation. It's real tricky, right? Because sometimes there's a need for CPR and chest compressions, and other times there's just not. But I would always encourage you to do rescue breathing, no matter what they say on the end of the line, because they're not there.
Right.
You're there. So I don't know if that was helpful. Do you guys?
Yeah.
In one situation that I was in, the only time I was ever told not to give rescue breaths was a person who was bleeding from the nose, had something lodged in their throat, and the EMTs had just said that if we had given the breaths, it could push that item further down. So maybe they told you that because they didn't know if the airway was clear. But I would give rescue breathing for sure if you can guarantee you have a clear airway.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, I'm Jill from Bremerton, Washington, and I have a question regarding, I know that Narcan works on opiates, but I had to deal with a drug overdose, and it was on benzos. Now, is that appropriate can you use Narcan on benzos?
Great question. So it's not gonna knock off the opioids from the receptors. However, the rescue breathing, you should give, now in hindsight, we might know that it was benzos, but at the time period, if you find somebody, you should just give it to them as if your rescue breaths are gonna deliver oxygen to their lungs, which is what's keeping them alive. So I would just go forward with it whether you know what substance it is or not. But Narcan alone will not bring back somebody who's overdosed on a benzo.
Thank you.
And also, I could give her Narcan right now, and she might get a little bit of a headache, and that's it. Yeah. So if in fact it is not, used for the intended target or whatever, it's not going to harm them. They're not going to get hurt. They're going to have a headache and be a little irritable, and that's it.
Thank you, ladies. Next question.
Yeah, John from Kansas City, survivor of an overdose and a recipient of Narcan, so thank you guys. My question is, where do we get more? Our house has a little bit, but where do we get more?
Who's your outreach?
Lance.
Huh?
Big Lance?
Lance Whitney? Yeah. I'll get with him.
All right.
Thank you, Casey. Next question.
Hi, my name is Ashley Pliska. I don't actually have a question. I'm very sorry. That's why I wanted to let everybody go. But I wanted to tell you guys, thank you, Seth Dewey. You are from my home state. My husband's name was Dustin Chaz Rookstool. He was born June 10th, 1980, and he died May 24th, 2020, in that month of a heroin overdose. He had recently left his Oxford house, and nothing was implemented in terms of people leaving due to conflict issues or relapse. My husband died alone in a house full of people, with a family that needed him in an Oxford house that could have helped him. Our last daughter was born 38 days later. I just wanted to come up here and just really, in support of what you guys have said, kindness and love in your house is incredibly important. not shaming people that have relapsed is incredibly important. Welcoming people back to recovery openly is incredibly important. And I just wanted to thank you guys for putting this on today, and I will meet with you. I will come up and give you my information later if there's anything I can do to help. But thank you. I am so grateful. Thank you for your service, Seth. We appreciate you.
Thank y'all very much for taking your time out today to join our panel. Y'all have a great weekend.